WPHL17 presents In Focus, a look at the issues affecting the Philadelphia region. Now your host, Steve Highsmith.
It has been about 15 months since Hurricane or Superstorm Sandy struck the eastern United States. The recovery continues, especially in the hardest hit areas of New Jersey and New York. Good morning, I'm Steve Highsmith and welcome to In Focus. Sandy was a Category 3 hurricane at its height. It damaged the Caribbean and 24 states in the United States. Nearly 300 deaths were attributed to the storm in 7 nations. Of them, about 160 direct and indirect deaths occurred in the United States. Most of the deaths were due to drowning. Sandy was the second costliest storm after Hurricane Katrina, causing about $65 billion in damage in the U.S. The storm damaged or destroyed at least 650,000 homes and 250,000 insured vehicles. More than 300,000 businesses were also affected. The Federal Emergency Management Agency says more than 8.5 million people lost power. The shore communities of central and northern New Jersey and coastal sections of New York State were hit the hardest. Sandy is the largest Atlantic hurricane on record, with winds spanning about 1,100 miles. The storm also has the lowest barometric pressure of any storm to make landfall north of Cape Hatteras. Top waves were recorded at 32.5 feet. And high tides became about 20% higher than usual because it was a full moon when Sandy struck. Now, 15 months later, the storm's impact remains. Recovery is still ongoing, or even a dream for some people. The effort known as Safer After Sandy has been providing free information and training about hazards that volunteers and workers and others may face while rebuilding. With me now are Janice Selinger, Communications Coordinator of the Safer After Sandy project, and Joe Galletta, Recovery Bureau Chief at the New Jersey State Office of Emergency Management. He is also acting captain of the New Jersey State Police. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Steve.
It's been 15 months. There's a process that's ongoing. But Janice, how would you describe where we are right now in rebuilding and recovery?
Well, there's a lot that has been done, but there's still a lot that needs to be done. And people, really need information so that they do it safely. In other words, people were hurt initially. We don't want people to be further damaged by doing work and not having the correct precautions. And that's one of the things that we're primarily interested in, is making sure that people rebuild safely.
Joe, may I call you Joe, Captain?
Yes, sir.
We see you working very hands-on with long-term recovery efforts. You see how the counties are responding. How do you assess where we are right now?
Well, clearly, when Hurricane Sandy wreaked havoc over a year ago, this was an event that over 260,000 citizens of the state of New Jersey replied or requested federal assistance through FEMA. With our engagement in long-term recovery efforts, we've worked with our New Jersey voluntary organizations active in disasters, our community organizations, and of course our county offices of emergency management and local offices of emergency management in establishing long-term recovery groups to help survivors recover from this ordeal.
And these long-term recovery groups, what stage are they at? What is long-term? Is it going to be 10 years? Is it 5 years, 2 years? Does it vary with the community?
Well, clearly with the magnitude of this disaster, they're engaged for a long term. It could be years. It really, you can't tell for sure, but they're committed for the long term. They've established a structure in place that has subcommittees that have emotional and spiritual care groups, donations management groups, construction groups, volunteer groups, and communication committees to get the word out that indeed they're out there to help survivors for the long term if needed.
So what's needed in 2014 and beyond is going to vary with each neighborhood, with each homeowner, with each business, but there are a lot of different needs, as Janice said, that are still ongoing. And Janice, you mentioned safety. Now, your organization has helped put together a number of public service announcements. We want to take a look at one of them. Obviously, if you go into some areas of the Garden State, you hear generators. And generators can be great things, but they can also be very dangerous. Let's take a look at this public service announcement.
It's that time again. Winter storms, portable generators to stay warm while doing recovery work. Generators should be kept outdoors, not in a garage, basement, or crawl space. That's because carbon monoxide can build up even if you open doors and windows or use fans. Generators can also lead to electric shock or fire. Stay warm and safe. Find out more at saferaftersandy.org. This message brought to you by the New Jersey Work Environment Council.
The generator problem, Janice, is this a problem? Have you noticed in the last 15 months that there have been injuries?
Not specifically in New Jersey that we have statistics about, but there are a number of people who have been injured by generators around the country in storms. And it's something that people need to be concerned about because, you know, a lot of times it happens with people that are used to working with generators and they don't think about it. And they think about the fact, well, if you open a window a little bit or you open a door, you're going to be okay. You really need to place that generator outside and not have it be inside. And you know,
Joe,
there can be injury.
And there's also a shock hazard that can happen with generators too, if they're not properly grounded.
Sure, sure. And the fact that Safe After Sandy is doing this training is so valuable to the groups that are out there helping out.
Let's take a look at the one that I mentioned about ladder safety as well, because this is a very common homeowner thing.
Rebuilding after Hurricane Sandy, employers must provide safe ladders and training to avoid falls. Never step on the top of a ladder. Make sure the ladder is secured and locks are engaged. Always keep 2 hands and a foot or 2 feet and a hand on the ladder, and don't exceed the weight a ladder can support, which includes tools and equipment, and pick the right ladder for the job. Find out more at saferaftersandy.org. This message brought to you by the New Jersey Work Environment Council.
People use a ladder and they're not so sure that they need to be far away from an electrical power source. You know, that's important because you don't want to have a problem with electrocution. You also want to make sure that you are dealing with having, you know, 3 points of contact on that ladder, you know, with having either 2 hands and a leg or 2 legs and a hand, you know, and making sure that you are, you know, tied at a point, you know, to be able to make sure that you're safe when you're doing this work.
When you talk about safety and training, is there training available to homeowners? Is there training available to contractors? How do you break that up?
Well, we are one of the Susan Harwood grantees from OSHA, and the New Jersey Work Environment Council has a grant over an 18-month period to train workers, homeowners, volunteers on how to prevent and avoid having, you know, problems when they're doing rebuilding. You know, the idea that, you know, you don't want to expose yourself to hazards, so you want to identify the hazards and prevent them. And so there's training about dealing with mold properly and making sure that you're not tackling too much of a mold problem, that, you know, if it becomes a certain amount, you need to make sure that that's someone that has been trained and is a contractor and knows how to remove that mold. But also how to just even identify hazards either in your home or in your workplace. We do this hazard mapping exercise where we have people take a look at, you know, this is my home, and, you know, you don't think about some of the things that are in your home or some of the things that are in the workplace that can be a hazard, and so it opens people's eyes to that, and also some OSHA training as well.
And to be clear, do you go to some place to get this training, or can you go to the homeowner or to a community and do it on site?
The first few trainings that we did were public programs, and, you know, people came from all over. What we do at this point is there's sort of on-demand trainings, and so what will happen is an organization, you know, if they have 15 to 20 people, they can contact us and we will set up a free training. And normally, you know, this kind of training does cost people to do. So this is an opportunity to have it provided for free and to provide important information, you know, for workers. We've done this for some of the long-term recovery groups and others, and are continuing to do that over the next year.
Joe, what do you see as the biggest need right now in the state for the homeowner or for communities in their effort to rebuild?
Well, the biggest need right now is to clearly be aware of these long-term recovery groups that are out there that can meet their needs if there's any gaps of unmet needs that they still need. Most of the information on long-term recovery groups can be gained through our website, ready.nj.gov, or by going to nj211.org. The list of all the long-term recovery groups are provided. And with the amount of volunteers that have been helping engage with the long-term recovery groups, I think we're over like 900,000 right now, and about 1.2 million hours worth of volunteer service. When you equate that, you put a dollar amount on it, it's roughly around like $36 million of work that they've been doing throughout the state of New Jersey. So clearly they've been valuable to us in recovery. Groups like Safe After Sandy have helped out the long-term recovery groups with all those members engaged with helping survivors. So it's going to be a long-term effort. So I would say that that's one of the things. They could contact their long-term recovery group. And of course, donations are still needed within the state of New Jersey. And a lot of the donations can be through the website that's established. It's ndmn.us/nj. where anybody could donate anything, which goes to the long-term recovery's donation committees.
It's a massive undertaking.
It is.
In this, though, unfortunately, there's always opportunity for criminals to take advantage of a homeowner in distress, for example. Have you experienced that? Do we know that those kinds of things have been going on?
Well, clearly we expect that may happen. We hate to think that it does, but the Attorney General's office in the state of New Jersey set up a website. It's stopsandyfraud.org, where citizens, if they recognize this type of stuff, can report it, and we will take action accordingly.
And what advice do you give to the homeowner to help prevent this? Because if they're confronted by somebody who says, hey, I can fix that, and I've got some money for you that I can save you, there's a tendency to want to jump on it because you want to get the thing fixed, whatever the problem is. But what advice do you generally give someone to watch out for?
Well, mostly we tell them to be wary, make sure they're licensed, to make sure they have documentation to prove who they say they are. And of course, on our website and on that stopsandyfraud.org website, this is all clearly delineated so the homeowner cannot be tricked by someone trying to prey upon them.
It's important, too, to ask if they're properly insured or bonded, that
Yes,
they're
sir.
able to be a professional organization and do the work that they do and will stand by the work that they do, let alone do it correctly.
Yes, sir.
Do you, Janice, have any suggestions for people as to at this stage in the process as to what they should do? What check should they do of their own situation right now?
Well, I think it's more that people sometimes think they've taken care of a problem. You know, for one of the things that we focused on a lot is mold. And so people think, oh, well, you know, if something is wet and we treat it, it's not going to be a problem. Sometimes it's not treated properly. It takes time to grow. You know, if it's 48 hours and the mold starts growing and it isn't taken care of properly, or sometimes they think they've taken care of it and then it comes back again. And I know that, you know, some of the people that we've dealt with in some of the trainings that we've had, some of the homeowners, you know, have been concerned because they weren't quite sure if they could do some of the remediation because they were waiting to get approval for some of the payment. And so, you know, they let it go, and, you know, they can develop some medical conditions. You know, it depends. You know, some people don't have a problem being exposed to mold spores, you know, because mold's everywhere, mold's out there. But, you know, if you have, you know, asthma or allergies or other, you know, issues, then, you know, it can be a very serious problem for people.
And the contractors, the cleanup people, the mold remediators have to be careful too.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that we deal with, you know, just, you know, when we're doing this training, again, for workers, is the fact that you have to be fit tested for your, you know, respirators that you're wearing for doing this. And you have to wear the proper kind of, you know, gloves and equipment, and we show that. And we talk to people about that. You know, the other thing is that generally some people don't understand that if you have a beard or facial hair, that a lot of times you really can't be doing this kind of work because the respirator can't be fitted properly.
You know, it's interesting, the insurance folks will tell you that most of the claims had to do with falling trees, damage caused by the trees falling, but most of the cost, or most of the actual damage that was done, not the claims, but most of the damage that was done by water. And, you know, by the surge that came in, or the flooding, or the roof, you know, leaked, or whatever the case may be. When you look at that kind of cleanup that's going on as you travel around Ocean County and travel around all the counties that have been affected by this, do you still see the damage from water and from falling trees 15 months later?
Well, clearly with mold, the main thing is you have to treat it very quickly or it just grows within the walls. A lot of our long-term recovery groups and the groups that helped out with cleaning or mucking out homes did it almost after the disaster happened, when it was safe to go in. Now we find, based on what we're hearing from our long-term recovery groups, that people were living within houses that didn't address the mold issue, and now it's grown within the walls. So that's something we're very concerned about as we move forward with our recovery efforts in the state.
Are you optimistic about how this is progressing and what the positive benefits that can happen the balance of this year?
Well, I'm optimistic about the partnerships that have formed with FEMA, our colleagues in the Offices of Emergency Management, and our partners in long-term recovery, Safer After Sandy. I'm committed that we're going to engage for the long term and help out as many as we can with Sandy aftermath.
Well, thank you both for stopping by today and for all the efforts that you've been doing and that you will continue to do, and be safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We'll have more on recovering from Superstorm Sandy, and I'll be joined by experts in getting you connected with the help you need, and on worker, home, and reconstruction safety as we continue this discussion ahead on In Focus on PHL 17. We're back on In Focus. I'm Steve Highsmith. Rebuilding after Sandy could still take years in some communities and for some homeowners. Here's a public service announcement about safety.
Staying warm during a storm, generators should be kept outside the house, garage, or basement. Avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. Find out more at saferaftersandy.org. This message brought to you by the New Jersey Work Environment Council.
The New Jersey Work Environment Council trying to prevent injury or death from the use of a portable generator. With me now are a couple of people who also are experts in this field. Laura Marks is with us. She's Executive Director of NJ211, and also here is Marianne Casillas-Pabellon, Executive Director of New Labor. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate you taking the time today and for all the work you've done since Sandy in particular. Let's begin with NJ211, New Jersey and 211 partnership. You've gotten a lot of calls in the last 15 months.
We sure have.
What kind of calls?
Day to day we handle health and human service information referral calls, and in a daily way we handle about 400,000 calls a year. But just for Hurricane Sandy this past year, we helped people before the storm with preparedness type calls, where to go for hotels or pet-friendly hotels, that sort of thing. As their recovery began, we helped them find the best services that really matched their needs at that time. And now we're really working with long-term recovery, looking at disaster case management, connecting people to those folks. And also, just recently we started to answer the renewed Jersey Stronger Assistance Hotline.
A lot of folks will say, well, I would imagine that all this got taken care of in 15 months, that somehow after the first month or two, all the insurance issues would be settled and all the folks who were harmed would have been connected with the people who could help them. But it sounds like it's just not that simple.
No, it really isn't. And I have to say, every day I'm still surprised as well. You know, you think that the call volume would go down and that you would have less and less people. And certainly we don't have the high number of calls that we did initially. But every day we have 50 to 100 callers who still haven't found the right connection to services yet in the community.
Well, and as our earlier guest pointed out also, Marianne, is that some problems were either greater problems than what they seemed initially after the storm, or took a while to develop, or there's a cascade effect and there's a whole new problem. But it's all traced back to what happened in late October.
I think so. It's also the way that that industry is in terms of construction, and the fact that sometimes we don't know where to go, right? And the way that workers are hired, the way that communities are connected to the workers, sometimes the connections are not that clear. So it becomes like this underground sector of the labor market, and then nobody knows where to go.
Yeah.
Well, now you're with New Labor. What is New Labor?
So in New Labor, we are a community-based organization, a worker center in New Jersey. We're also membership-based. So we represent workers from low-wage industries, and we have around 2,300 members across the state. New Labor's mission is to empower workers to be able to use their voices to make changes at home, at work, and in their communities. So with this project, what we wanted to do is empower the workers to work safe, and at the same time being able to spread the word about what this working safe means.
Well, working safe since Sandy, are you encountering a lot of problems where workers are put in unsafe positions, and because they're low-paid workers, they're taken advantage of in that way?
Yeah, a lot of the issues are with falls. Workers don't know what they are cleaning to, and they don't know who is hiring them either. Sometimes they may be hired by temp agencies or contractors of out of state, and they actually don't know who they are working for. That's an issue. The other issue is what happens in terms of payment. Sometimes they don't get paid, and they are not getting the right equipment or tools to do their job. So I've been asked to build a house or to lift a house, and I never done it before. Or I have to go on top of the roof and with a ladder, and I have to bring all the equipment with me through the extension ladder. And surprise, surprise,
so you're getting stories over the last 15 months of people saying, I've been asked to do things on this job with this house that I've never been trained to do.
Yeah,
and
that happens
everything that from climbing onto a roof to actually raising a house?
Yeah. They have, a lot of the houses across the shore have been asked to be raised, and a lot of workers don't have that training. They are just being told to put a piece of wood here, to move this, to use mechanic tools that they haven't received the proper training. cut concrete or stones or tiles and dry, and they are exposed to long-term illnesses through that too.
How can 211 help people ask the right questions to find out if the contractor that they've hired actually knows how to do the job they're doing?
I think so. I think, first connecting people to the service and programs that are out there right now. In one of the state funded assistance programs, the REM program, it's called, is a reconstruction program. They actually have licensed contractors who are vetted and who really know how to work on the rebuild process. And if you've hired your own contractor, they can also work with them to make sure they're licensed and bonded and all the kinds of things you need. But everyone wants to get back home. So people have taken steps that perhaps were shortcuts, perhaps, just to be able to get home, and you can understand that. So education is so very important, and we refer to groups all the time that are trying to really make a difference in this area.
And you're encountering workers who have been injured or will call you and say, I did all this work for 60 hours and didn't get paid?
Yes, we have. We have workers that have been hired through temp agencies in Ontario, California, and didn't get paid overtime after working 60 hours.
Wow. Well, more on safety in the long wake of Hurricane Sandy in a moment on PHL 17. And back on In Focus as we continue to recover after Hurricane Sandy. With me are Marianne Casillas-Pabellon, Executive Director of New Labor, and Laura Marks, Executive Director of New Jersey 211. The issue of whistleblowers, obviously some of these workers encounter these situations. Is there protection in New Jersey?
Yes, when you have health and safety conditions, you can use the Section 11C, which will protect workers that complain against retaliation. There's a lot of workers that have been threatened by their employers that they are going to call immigration if they actually complain about the conditions. So OSHA is trying to do an effort to kind of reach out to these workers, and that's why there's also the training.
And the training that goes on, who does that?
So in our organization, our members that are construction workers as well, safety liaisons, are the ones reaching out to the workers and doing the training themselves. So it becomes a peer-to-peer training in which workers feel more comfortable and they're able to feel more open and confident to share their stories.
I guess one of the important lessons of all of this is it's okay if you still have a lot of work to be done, or you even just have questions or concerns, and there are places to go to ask the simple questions, even if you don't even know really what the question is.
No, I think that's really true, and that's what's nice about having 211 is kind of a central portal. We can get people to the right resource the first time so that they don't have to make the 40 phone calls. And we're available 24/7 as well. So, if it's a late night worker and, they're concerned about what to do next, they can give us a call. We'll be there.
Have you heard about the Sandy cough? Is that still a problem?
Yes, there's workers that are being asked to do mold remediation, and they are supposed to scrap themselves without the proper equipment. And they get respiratory illnesses, cough, asthma, and stuff like that.
Laura, as you think about all those images that we see about those waves and that wind and those 2 or 3 days, where do you think we're going after all of this? Are we rebuilding smarter? Are we doing the right steps to, you can't prevent a storm from coming, but you can prevent how you encounter that storm? Yeah,
I think so. I think we've talked to so many people, and there's such a different awareness now about what needs to be done in terms of elevation. And at first I think people were concerned about it because it's so expensive, but I think everyone understands now that there's just some kinds of safety precautions we need to take place. But I think just preparedness in general, people know now that they need to prepare for the lights being out. There were 1.5 million people without power and who called us for days and days and didn't know what to do. So I think that we are helping to educate people in that way so that when there's maybe a snowstorm or something that's not quite so horrible this time, that they will be prepared and ready, to take care of themselves and their families.
I don't think the storm has passed yet. And in terms of, if we just say that the storm passed, we kind of tend to forget the things that are going on now. We may be trying to be more proactive in some things, but there is a lot of this work that's still going on the silos, and sometimes people don't pay attention to it, and because it's so separated from ourselves, sometimes we don't actually do it. Laura was mentioning that that there's a rush to make this happen soon and quickly. And that need cannot supersede the lives of the people that are doing this work right now and the homeowners that have to live in those houses too. So it's really important that that is balanced as well, because it's a human story. It's part of that story as well if we don't pay attention to that.
So there's a lot of work still yet to be done, a lot of lessons we've learned in this.
Seguro
We pay
que
attention
sí,
to them.
of course.
Of course. And are you overall optimistic about this now that you've been in these wars for a long time?
Optimism might be, a strong word. I have hope. I know that there's really wonderful organizations that are out there working so very hard for people, and the long-term recovery groups are really on the ground making it happen.
Well, thank you both, and thank you for all the work you've done, and you will do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Be safe. And that's In Focus for this week. Thanks for watching. I'm Steve Highsmith. Enjoy your weekend. Have a great week ahead.